The first crack in that silent house showed up when a spoon slipped from my hand, hit the tile and pinged like a tiny bell, and the boy upstairs flinched. I caught it in the corner of my eye, a ripple through shoulders that were always still, and the whole mansion felt like it took a breath it had been holding for years. That was the moment I stopped being just the help and started being the one person in Whitaker Ridge who actually listened. My name is Nora Reyes. A month before the spoon, I came up the mountain with a soft suitcase and a promise to keep the place running, cook simple food, and stay out of the way. Summit Creek sits small under a big Colorado sky, and Whitaker Ridge sits above Summit Creek like a crown, all glass and stone, beautiful and cold, the kind of house that looks like money solved every problem except the ones that matter. The owner, Grant Whitaker, shook my hand in the foyer and gave me the line I would hear again and again: he doesn't hear Ms. Reyes, he keeps to himself. People said his wife died in a small plane crash over the range. People said his son Leo was born deaf, never spoke, never laughed. The house kept the story like scripture, and my job was to dust around it. Leo was 18, tall, careful, always carrying a sketchbook, like it tethered him to the room. He rarely looked up, he moved like he was underwater. And that first week, I learned how to be present, without pressing leave a glass of water near his chair, switch a pillowcase without being seen, straighten a blanket, and slip out. If you've ever worked where grief moved in and never paid rent, you know the rule: quiet is not just quiet, it's a shield. Even so, something felt wrong. Silence can be comfort, but this was padlock silence, the kind that makes even the walls hold their breath. After the spoon, I tested what I'd seen without making a show, a heavier step on the hallway boards, where the wood thudded a little, a soft tap with the broom handle near the baseboard, a mug set down with the smallest kiss of sound. Each time Leo answered with a needle of movement, a blink, a tilt, fingers pausing on the page. I'm not a doctor. I've cleaned motels and classrooms and a dentist's office where the assistant called me honey, like she practiced it in a mirror, but I know the difference between a gust moving a leaf and a bird deciding to fly. These were decisions. He wasn't hearing everything, but he was hearing something. I found a cracked little Bluetooth speaker in a forgotten music room tucked under sheet music that still smelled faintly like the night someone played for someone they loved. It held a charge. One afternoon, when the house went soft, gardeners outside Grant on a call, Leo by the window, drawing the line of a pine shadow like he was tracing breath, I set the speaker on the chair beside him and cued a piano lullaby I used to play for my own boy. Low volume, no rush, just a thread of notes you feel before you name. At first he stayed still, then his eyes widened a fraction. His hand lifted to his chest, like he was listening with his bones. His lips parted, and a rusted word climbed out. Mama. I didn't clap, didn't cry loud, didn't break the spell. I just sat down on the rug and let the air be holy for a minute. Over the next days, I let the music come in small sips, river sounds, rain on leaves, a cello that moved like weather, a humming voice always short, always gentle. He reacted most to the low, to vibration, to what the body can catch, even when the ear struggles, and once he smiled, quick and honest, and then embarrassed, like joy was a secret he hadn't meant to show. You know what I mean? When you finally see a light, and you're afraid someone will put it out. In the back of a broken cabinet, I found a plastic tub full of old pill bottles and reports with Leo's name dosages that made my stomach tighten, and the same signature on every label, Dr. Victor Hargrove. Neurocalm XR sounds like a lavender candle, but what I read that night on my phone did not smell like lavender. Ototoxic popped up more than once. Permanent damage sat on the page like a dare, and words like trials and complaints and never approved for pediatric use made me sit in the dark with my hands shaking and my jaw clenched. I told myself not to jump, not to march into a billionaire's office with a theory and a speaker. But life doesn't always wait for you to plan it. Grant walked in on a quiet afternoon, saw the device on the dresser, heard the faint pull of strings, and snapped to hard attention. "What is this? What are you doing to my son?" He didn't look at Leo, he looked at the thing making the sound, and his voice turned into the kind you win boardrooms with. "He's deaf, Ms. Reyes. He doesn't need your experiments. Turn it off or pack your things." I kept my hands steady and my voice level. "He's reacting. Just watch him for 30 seconds, please." He stepped forward, jaw set. I stepped back, ready to leave with my dignity if I had to. And then Leo moved first. He stood crossed. The space wrapped his arms around my waist and held on like someone who has been swimming too long and finally found something that floats. Grant stopped like he'd hit a wall he couldn't buy his way through. Leo's voice came thin and brave. "I can feel it. I can hear some." Yeah, that happened. The room changed shape. I told Grant about the spoon, the footsteps, the music, the word that came from somewhere deep, showed him the tub of bottles and the neat little labels that had promised help and delivered harm. He sat like a man who just realized certainty might be the most expensive thing he ever purchased. The next morning, a different doctor came through the gate, Elise Turner. No white horse, just smart hands and eyes that didn't miss much. She clapped softly behind Leo, used a tiny speaker, and a tuning fork had me play the same piano piece at different volumes. Watched his eyes and throat and posture. And then she said, what my gut already knew. Not silent residual hearing sensitivity to vibration, and lower frequencies he can improve with care and time. I can't promise perfect. I can promise possible. She picked up one of Hargrove's bottles, read, and her face went from kind to hard. "Who prescribed these?" she asked. And when Grant answered, she nodded, like a person who hates chance when rumors turn into facts. "There have been complaints, trials that never should have happened, doses that never should have touched a child. I'm sorry." We turned the museum back into a house, and then into a war room. Files, timelines, receipts, messages. Turner's letters, the district attorney looped in, and then the phone calls started coming from other families, other kids, other nights, where somebody sat in the dark with shaking hands because a label had lied to them. The Summit Creek Courthouse is small, more coffee breath than grandeur. The cameras stayed outside, inside. It was a judge with tired eyes, a prosecutor who didn't seem to enjoy winning, a defense attorney who billed you for blinking, and Dr. Hargrove wearing a face so smooth it looked ironed. The questions were simple. The paperwork lined up like fence posts. The word ototoxic sat in the air and didn't leave. I told my part: the spoon, the footsteps, the speaker. The first word, mama, no theatrics, because truth didn't need help. Grant told his how a man who can buy 10 opinions sometimes buys the one that hurts less, how he settled for certainty because hope cut too deep. Dr. Turner made it plain, not fully deaf, not fully hearing enough to honor. The verdict landed without cheers, guilty of harm, guilty of deception, guilty of forgetting that a child is not a lab. We went home and started the slow work that movies cut into a montage. Sound, maps at the kitchen table, syllables with the exhaust fan running, because life is loud, rhythm games with feet and hands. Grant learning to talk with his whole face, Leo reaching for the speaker on his own, and choosing the cello more than the piano, drawing sound in his sketchbook, as curved lines that climbed like a trail at dawn. A few months later, the Civic Center called his name for a small community award, Nothing fancy, just neighbors clapping for the miracle of trying. He took the mic with both hands, found me and his dad in the crowd, and said she listened first, then he learned how now I'm not by myself. Not poetry, better than poetry, plain truth, that held the room quiet and kind. Back at the house, we put his plaque on the shelf by the window, where the pines make that soft song even when the wind is sleeping. He drew 3 stick figures holding hands, and then sat at the old piano that had waited years for someone to touch it. With love found 2 notes that didn't fight, and let them wobble into something like a beginning. If this were a fairy tale, I'd stop there. But real life is messier and more interesting. And here's the part that opens a fight in the comments. Who carries the blame when science and status team up and get it wrong? The parent who believed the wrong voice, the doctor who pushed the wrong drug, the system that makes both feel sure or all of us, and the assumptions we make about disability worth and what a quiet child can or cannot do. Tell me where you stand. If this hit you, tap like share it with someone who needs it, and drop a comment. What's justice when the truth arrives late but finally arrives? And what did you see in your town that taught you how to listen? You know what I mean?